The elephant in the room. Someone sent an anonymous letter, and I decided to answer it. So here's the thing. I have tried my very best to live my life out in the open. I'm a writer. That alone puts the fear of God into family members. I'm liable to share anything. If you're planning a surprise party, don't tell me. I won't give the secret away on purpose, but my default setting for transparency will accidentally let it slip every single time. Lying doesn't work for me either. If I try to fib about something, I get a weird, creepy grin on my face. It's like the Joker, but the opposite of his intentions. Although now that I think about it, that could have been what put that smile on his face, too. My mouth does the same thing with half-truths. Trying to keep the truth of what happened to our horse Sheba on the trailer ride to the new farm from the children in the barn, whose parents have chosen to offer a softer version of her absence, has been very hard for me to pull off without slipping. We have multiple children at the farm who have lost parents. Many of those kids were close to Sheba. And that is just one layer of how we live with her loss every day. I gave the parents the option of discussing Sheba's accident in whatever way worked for their individual family structure. When I wrote the full details of her death a few weeks ago, it was with the full knowledge that one day these kids may read my words and understand what happened. I had to weigh the cost of that against the need for Sheba's story not to disappear as if it had never happened. And that's just a fraction of the internal balancing that happens every day on this farm. There's also the physical balancing. I wish I had taken a photo of what the garage looked like last week. A maze of towering boxes with narrow sections where slim people had to turn sideways just to pass through. I'm not one of those slim people. I bump into everything. When we landed at Lavender Hill, the horses and the tools that make their daily care possible were the priority for unpacking. The tack room filled quickly with heaps of saddles and bridle leather, but organizing it was far down the list. There were fences to mend. There were gates to rehang. The horses adjusted immediately to their new life, but we watched them constantly, monitoring and making changes to their care day and night. They watched us curiously while savoring mouthfuls of grass, living their best lives and becoming more balanced and at ease every day. We returned to round bale hay feeding in the fields once the grass went dormant in the cooler weather. It had been nearly 2 decades since I had shoved my shoulder into a big round and pushed it into place. Luckily, this time I had help. When I first started Bramblewood, it was often just me pressing a round bale off the back of a truck with my legs. Max, my chestnut quarter horse, is 32 this year. It's 32 in March. That's this month. He has lived through all of these changes. My OCD was strangely quiet during the first weeks at Lavender Hill. I didn't know where most of the light switches were yet, so it was hard to obsess over whether they were turned off. But my hyperfixating found new places to hover as we moved forward. Social media filled with horror stories of horses dying from botulism poisoning in round bales. I picked up my phone and panic texted the veterinarian. "Did we need everyone vaccinated for botulism?" I asked. And she assured me that our rounds were high quality and stored well. Would George develop laminitis, a painful and potentially deadly inflammation of the hoof lamina from eating the cool fall grasses? I watched him stand and walk, scanning for the smallest sign of discomfort. Would the horses in the field beside the road decide to test the fences? Michelle researched and ordered reflective collars for all the horses. Thank you, Michelle, for your heart-assuring gift. Would the well pump hold up under heavy use after sitting idle for so long while the property was vacant and on the market? Would the horses step into the pond and be unable to get out? Would the old oak at the edge of the pasture decide to drop a limb on a windy night? Would the systems in the farm stand up to incoming winter? Christopher is an aviation technician who works a day job. In the spare hours he has at the farm, he rebuilds the fencing, digging corner post by hand and ferrying bundles of post across the fields on his shoulder. Since we arrived at Lavender Hill, his entire life has become fencing. We hardly see each other on the weekends. He is fixing fences, and I'm by the barn teaching students. Christopher's unwavering and constant work, getting this farm in order and walking the fence lines at night, counting the horses, making sure that everything is okay, is a testament to his devotion to the idea of what we're building and growing here. He wasn't a farmer until he came to live with me. The beauty of Lavender Hill is that it is ours now, and we're doing this together. If someone has a problem with my work, they also have a problem with him. And Christopher is wholly innocent. He is the best of all humans. The work that happens here is not mine alone. It unfolds through his hands every day in ways most people will never see. And any dismissal of what happens on this farm diminishes the effort he pours into it, not just me. With the barn mostly in order, it finally felt good to begin tackling the garage last weekend. All the belongings we don't truly need, the accumulated detritus of life, were waiting in damp boxes stacked across the floor, their quickly taped lids from the move powdered with bits of popcorn ceiling that had fallen loose above them. There are all kinds of symbolism there. It had taken me 5 months to find time to even begin unpacking our lives. Between the boxes and books and trips up and down the stairs, a letter arrived in the mail last week. It was addressed to me. Inside the envelope was a printed letter. No name, no return address. This is what it said. Kimberly, we are writing on behalf of concerned members of the community who donated to Bramblewood's cause. Our main concern is the safety and welfare of Bramblewood's horses, as well as the proper use of the donation money. Many people donated a considerable amount to you. At first, you framed it as, quote, saving Bramblewood's farm. However, you did not save the farm and rather purchased a farm with much improved conditions for yourself, while the horses are now living outside with no shelter and very unsafe fencing conditions. We feel that it is very wrong to have taken so much money from the hands of trusted members of your community, and that you are not using it to better the lives of the horses, but rather for your own desires. We are very disturbed at this, and we are watching carefully and hoping that you will choose to use the donated money to put up proper fencing properly right away and build shelters immediately for all the horses. The second concern are the deadly and horrific conditions that you created that led to the death of Sheba during transport. You were placing the blame on others while, in truth, you orchestrated a very dangerous, deadly situation and then sat back and did nothing. You were responsible for making sure the horses were safe during transport. Instead, you left the loading and transport of the horses in hands of inexperienced handlers, while you sat back and did not even bother to supervise the situation. You are entirely at fault for Sheba's death. There is the huge question of how and why you thought it was okay to load so many horses into one trailer with no divisions, etc. Even if the trailer floor had been safe, it is incredibly dangerous to load so many horses into one trailer without proper separation, etc. We have discussed this with many respected expert horsemen who are all shocked and in disbelief that you created such dangerous conditions for the horses. This makes us all question your intentions and equine, quote, expertise. You conned people into donating a lot of money for transporting the horses. Instead, you chose the most dangerous and cheapest way possible to transport them. You should have hired a deluxe rig or moved horses in small groups with proper separation. There are any number of ways that would have been safe and prevented this accident. Furthermore, when Sheba was injured, you didn't even go to help or support. You should have been there for the horses and the humans involved. This is pure negligence and irresponsibility on your part. Many within the community have been permanently traumatized by what happened during the transportation process and are especially upset that you are blaming it all on others rather than taking responsibility for your cheap and heartless decisions. We think it was in very poor taste to post details of the accident in order to try to exonerate yourself, which it did not do, as it is clear that your decisions were negligent, uneducated, and not in the best interest of the horses. We cannot bring Sheba back from the grave, but we encourage you to educate yourself on safe shipping methods and to know that you should have gotten off your high horse and supervised the process, equipment, helpers, etc., and used the donated funds to get the horses transported safely. She deserves so much better, and the rest of the horses do as well. Hopefully, you will do the right thing and spend the money to give the horses proper living conditions for their future. If not, we are considering lawsuits for misleading and misusing donations and have already filed complaints with animal control for the dangerous fencing and lack of shelters. I read the letter several times. Anonymous letters are a strange thing. They allow someone to speak with certainty while remaining safely invisible. But the problems described in the letter do not reflect the reality we live at Lavender Hill. The hardest part of reading the letter wasn't the attack on me, but the erasure of the work of so many people that happens here every single day. I kept my cool as I informed our donors and extended community that supports our farm on social media. Many people advised me to brush it off, to let it go, to not take the letter seriously. But I can't let it go. The letter was addressed to me, and I'm glad it was. But the accusations in this poison pen letter affect many more people than just me. Before the move, our farm existed because of years, decades of built connections and contributions. All of that condensed into a kind of urgency when we learned that there was no choice but to relocate the farm. A small core group of people came together and did the work of giants. I don't include myself in their numbers because I'm humbled by what they accomplished. I never, ever could have moved this farm by myself. And here we are, 5 months later, and that same core group is still donating time, sweat, and resources to ensure that this farm continues. This anonymous writer is not just accusing me. By proxy, this person is accusing them. And that is something I cannot stay silent about. Every single person who gave to our move is part of that extended community. Without them, this relocation would not have been possible. I've connected with the vast majority of them this week after receiving the letter. Some responded by giving even more. The transition is not complete. We haven't landed quietly and safely. The work is not over. It's only just getting started. I've had worse accusations thrown at me. More often than not, they arrive secondhand, filtered through someone else rather than spoken directly. My life has been filled with people deciding they are done and leaving before we ever have a chance to sit down and talk honestly about what is wrong. Without that conversation, there is no chance to understand their grievance, and no chance for me to speak for myself, and no chance for us to all learn from it. But what I know we have done, what I know with absolute certainty, is give the horses at Lavender Hill the best possible life we can. I stand beside that truth unflinchingly. If anyone spends an hour with us at the farm, they'll understand why. I held back in my public responses on social media. I know this person is watching. They say so in the letter. Stable Roots is the platform where I write from my heart. I'm not going to shy away from my feelings today. Here is my letter back to the person that sent the anonymous note. To the person who wrote the anonymous letter, you addressed me by name, so I will answer you the same way I answer every hard thing that crosses my desk or my life. I will write to you directly. And I am always here to sit with you face to face and talk from our hearts. I mean that. You chose to not put your name on the letter, and that choice tells me everything I need to know about the difference between the two of us. I live my life in the open. My decisions, my work, my mistakes, and my grief all exist in public view because that is how I'm made, and that is why I write. I prefer things to be revealed. You choose the protection of anonymity. If you believed what you wrote strongly enough, you would have had the courage to sign it. You accuse me of misusing donations. Let me be clear about something you either do not understand or have chosen to ignore. The gifts received during the transition of this farm totaled roughly $85,832. The property we now sit on cost $1.3 million, and the overwhelming majority of that came from my own pocket. Removing the house, or as you put it, the much improved conditions I now live in, from that total, the land, barn, and arena alone cost $641,664. The house was not a luxury purchase added on to the land. It was part of the property and could not be separated from the sale. If securing the land for the horses had meant sleeping in a tent beside the barn, I would have done so without hesitation. After every single penny of financial gifts for the move is accounted for alongside the direct cost of the moving process, I paid $614,967.95 out of my own pocket, without the house included in this total. If your goal was to expose some grand deception, you have misread the scale of what actually happened here. If you think someone who wanted to con people would choose a business model where they personally carry the overwhelming financial burden of the outcome, you might want to sit with that logic for a moment. Moving a working horse farm is not a romantic exercise. It is expensive, exhausting, and logistically complex work. It involves equipment, infrastructure, labor, insurance, emergency cost, lost income, and countless hours of physical and emotional effort that most people will never see. That is the reality behind every farm of any type that survives relocation. One thing in your letter that struck me was the suggestion that I present myself as some kind of unquestionable authority on horses. I have never done that, not once. I have spent my entire life around horses and people who know far more than I do. And not a single mentor I respect has ever claimed that kind of certainty for themselves. The title expert is given by others to others in the horse world. It is hard-earned and rare. I would trust no one who claimed that status, and I absolutely do not claim it for myself. The best horsemen I know speak with humility because horses demand it. Every day with the horse is an education, and every decision carries responsibility. Every mistake becomes a lesson I carry forward. I will never stop learning about horses, and I will never stop learning from the choices I make around them. Anyone who believes this work comes with a finish line of mastery has not spent very long in the company of horses. You decided to take the very worst day of that lifelong learning process, the day Sheba died, and turn it into a weapon. Losing our old farm was horrible. Losing Sheba in the manner that she died was something I will never recover from. Sheba was my horse. You wrote about her as if she were a talking point in an argument. To me, she was a life that I carried responsibility for. The grief from that day is not something you get to assign, measure, or perform outrage about from the safety of anonymity. I documented what happened at the urging of actual experts, foremost the woman who wrote the literal book on large animal rescue, because the horse world hides too many accidents, and hiding them helps no one. The information from that day is now being used to train first responders, transporters, and barn owners so that other horses and other people might be safer in the future, so they don't make the same mistakes as me. Every single person who was traumatized by Sheba's passing had a vote in how the details of her passing were released to the public. We decided together how to share her story and how it would be used. It was not a flippant essay I posted to make myself feel better. It was a collective response to community pain. Everyone had a say, and all voices were taken into account. I know that you were not present at the scene, nor was I. But I do have to look everyone who was present in the eye. They all know how sorry I am and how fully I have taken the blame. I don't blame them, I blame myself. You accuse me of sitting back and doing nothing while something dangerous happened. If you had any understanding of what that day actually looked like, you would know how absurd that claim is. But you did not ask. You did not come to the farm. You did not speak to the people who were present. You wrote a letter instead. You speak in the voice of, quote, concerned members of the community. I know this community well enough to recognize when a collective voice is speaking and when a single person is attempting to sound larger than they are. The response to the letter made that distinction quite clear. The horses here are not neglected. They live in pasture with grass, water, hay, herd companionship, some shelters, which they rarely use, and daily care while we continue to build fencing and infrastructure step by step. Farms are not built overnight. They are built through years of work, investment, and stewardship. The fences we inherited with the purchase of this farm are vastly safer and more sturdy than the fences we operated around in the old location. The land we now occupy will remain agricultural land because I chose to step forward and secure it when the previous farm was lost. The old property is already being developed. Without the relocation, this operation and everything it represents would have disappeared. Most of the horses would have been euthanized because they could not find homes. You are free to dislike me. You are free to question my decisions. What you are not free to do is rewrite reality. You chose to step into the story anonymously. I choose to live it openly. There is nothing more to say. Kimberly Carter. When I shared the letter publicly, I didn't know what to expect or how the response would be. What happened makes me want to thank the letter writer. I heard from people across the globe. The silence that anonymous accusations depend on never materialized. My phone is filled with messages. People who have stood beside this farm for years spoke up. People who donated to the move wrote to say they were proud of what we built together. Some even sent additional support this week to ensure the work continues. That response means so much more than an unsigned piece of paper. The truth is not determined by whoever shouts the loudest from the shadows. It is revealed in the people who are willing to stand beside each other in the light. Our work, unchanged from the day before, continues. For anyone who genuinely wants to understand how the relocation funds were used, I am happy to provide the full financial summary detailing both the gifts that supported this move and the actual costs. Transparency has always been the standard here, and it will remain that way. Send me a private message, comment here, give me a call. There is no shame or strings attached to my offer. Anyone who would like to know where those gifts went is welcome to ask for the accounting. But as for the anonymous accusation and threats, I have said what needs to be said. The line is drawn. Now it's time to notice what is in front of us, take care of those around us, and get back to work. Christopher, for his part, will continue working on the fences. Off we go. Love, Kim.